was the Pope appealing for peace, or was he praying for peace?
And the same applies to the Carrie Moon drag.
Yeah, that's a good question. So what do you have to say about that, guys? Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and welcome to the latest edition of Views on the News. This is the show where we have the wise and witty commentators, opinionated people who talk about the events in global atheist news that I reported on yesterday. Today we have with us my co-host from South Africa, Tersia. How the devil are you?
I'm closer to hell than normally because we have our fire season and we've had terrible bushfires. Fortunately, not too much damage, but the entire valley is enveloped in a thick smoke. So we're keeping an eye out for that. But otherwise, well, thank you.
Good. Well, I'm glad there's no fire in your immediate vicinity. We wouldn't want that.
No.
And there's David from New York State. Welcome, David.
Hello.
How the devil are you?
I am doing really well, thank you. Full of the devil.
Good.
Beelzebub, Satan, you name it. I'm
Yeah.
right,
Excellent. Yeah, and we're hoping to see you later on in the year at one of our events that we organize, that Atheism UK organizes in the UK. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So here we go with the news. Now, you may or may not know that there's been lots of protests and marches in London. And last Sunday, hundreds of people joined a silent, multi-faith peace walk in London. There were no flags, there were no placards, there were no chants. It was very civilized. Muslims, Jews, Christians, Hindus, and Buddhists walked side by side from Trafalgar Square to Parliament Square and back, together with people of a non-religious affiliation.
Very nice.
And they were walking in solidarity with those affected by the conflict in the Middle East. Isn't that the way it should?
It seems that maybe people are watching us because that's exactly what we suggested should happen more frequently in last week's show. So maybe some people somewhere out there are listening to us, and I think it's a brilliant show and a heartwarming and human show of the values that I think most humans, regardless of their faith, stand for.
Wouldn't it be nice if we had such influence? David, do you think it's likely?
Well, I think that when people of different faiths are of goodwill, that healthy things can happen. And this is very nice to see people not harming each other, not accusing each other of genocide or whatever they might be accusing them each other about, and acting, as I like to say, like humanists. Being, respecting each other's rights, speaking out for the pain and suffering of others, which is crosses every religious and philosophical line. So more power to them.
Absolutely. Sometimes I think, we've got to sort of stand in between these warring tribes, like a sort of referee, and say, hang on a minute, hang on, let's think about this rationally.
Right.
Anyway, there was a Rabbi Alexandra Wright, who is the president of Liberal Judaism and the senior rabbi of the Liberal Jewish Synagogue. And she said at this rally, "War hurts our hearts. We pray for those who are still held hostage and for their release from captivity, and for the thousands in Israel and Gaza who have been displaced from their homes. We pray for peace in the region, for the safe passage of humanitarian aid to all those who need it, for the wisdom and moral courage of world leaders, and for civility here in the UK and across the West among those who may find themselves on opposite sides of this conflict. She added that war may be geographically far from us, but it's felt, even here, like ground ruptures of an earthquake.
Yes.
I could like that woman.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's, when you're speaking about common human dignity, it's clear that you don't need a religious perspective to be good to one another. And that seems to be what this march was about. Hey, we're all human. Let's get past this tribal BS and work for peace. And I would work with anybody who felt that like that.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Unfortunately, things are not like that in Iran, where a woman was whipped. I think it's a public whipping, 74 times for not covering her hair.
It's just, what do you say? I mean, I would be shocked if this was shocking, but sadly, it seems like an everyday occurrence in most theocratic nations that are so male dominated, and that whose rule of law is theocratic rather than based on human rights. There's no human rights there, and more is the pity. We should be marching for people who are being savaged like this every day. I mean, it's good to call out the violence of what we call war, when it happens in Ukraine and Russia, in Israel and Palestine. But this is a war on humanity that is being played out. It's a war on women that's being played out.
Not entirely. It's not entirely misogynistic, because in Iran, a man faces the death penalty for insulting Islam.
I just want to say something about this whole misogyny thing. And I recently went from having long hair, having had long hair most of my life, to going really, really short. So perhaps
we like it.
One way of inspiring thought amongst the more conservative Muslims about this, and it's something I've never thought about, is I wonder, so is it about covering the hair, or is it about covering what exactly? Because what would happen, for example, if a Muslim woman were to shave all her hair off, or what if she had something like chemotherapy and she lost all her hair? Would she then be able to appear in public without a head covering? So is it about covering the hair, or is it about covering the scalp? I wonder whether they. I'd like to know. Maybe some Muslim imam out there is listening to us and can come on one of our shows to answer that question, because I'm really quite curious about it. And maybe that's a solution, if women would be prepared, or even just wear something like what you put over your head if you want to wear a wig, because then the hair is covered. I don't know. I'm asking.
There's the Hasidic Jews who do that. They're women, keep their hair, but they have to put an artificial wig over.
Sorry, I agreed to the trial.
Yeah.
You're going to say, David, about this?
Well, so many religions have rules about dress and head coverings in particular. Religious Jews wear yarmulkes, or you can be you can be Sikh and you have to wear a turban, and so on and so forth. So pretty much every religion has their dress code, and what's allowed for both men and women. And usually it is more punitive for women, you know, whether it's the hijab or for Jewish women to be dressed, you know, fully down and you can't show ankles or, you know, so it tends to be very restrictive, more restrictive towards women for a lot of subjective reasons that, of course, always date back to somebody quoting their religious texts.
And it's a particular fetish towards the hair, isn't it? They can have makeup, you know, and they can have lovely nails and everything, but no hair. So Tersia's had a connection fail. She's trying to get back. So we'll have to wait to see whether she's successful.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I've got a video I want to show you, which I find quite horrifying because there she is.
Oh, here's Tersia. She's back.
No camera yet. But let me show you this video because it's happening in my country and I don't like it. Take a look at this.
The chant repeated is death to Israel. It's not in Iran, but Hammersmith, West London, inside the Kanun Tawhid Islamic Center. The event was to celebrate the life of top Iranian Revolutionary Guard commander, General Qasem Soleimani. Soleimani was killed in a US airstrike, and he was sanctioned in the UK for links to terrorism. This was one of 3 events captured on video and seen by the BBC. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, is one of the most powerful paramilitary organisations in the Middle East. Some MPs fear it's trying to radicalise UK students. And security services say it's plotting to kidnap or kill people on British soil. The 2 other events were online speeches by former and active IRGC commanders, promoted in advance by the Islamic Students Associations of Britain, who are based inside Kanun Tawhid. This is former senior IRGC commander Saeed Ghassemi. He is known for extreme speeches, and in this clip, he falsely claims the Holocaust was fake.
اون اینه که هولوکاست واقعی در کشور تو اتفاق افتاد. اونی که میگن یهودی‌ها یک چیز دروغین و ساختگیه.
He also glorifies the death of IRGC commander General Qasem Soleimani and describes his return from death in an apocalyptic war that will end the lives of Jews.
که این پایان عمر ظالمین و اشغالگران و صهاینه است و یهودی‌ها در کل جهان که
Look at the top left of the footage. The banner written in Farsi translates to the Islamic Students Associations of Britain. We also obtained footage of this live-streamed event in September 2020. It lasted over 20 minutes and was watched by around 1,500 people. It was hosted by the man on the left, Mohammed Hussein Ateye, a British citizen educated in Yorkshire who was secretary of the Islamic Students Associations of Britain at the time. He is no longer the secretary, and this is the only event he appears in. The man on the right is IRGC commander Hossein Yekta, and he had this message for students.
و ما رفتیم جبهه شد دانشگاه، یعنی جایی شما شدید افسرهای جوان جنگ نرمی که باید این رسالتی که به دوشتونه.
Mohammed Hussein Ateye said the allegations are false. He would not answer the BBC's questions. Previously, he said he does not have direct or indirect affiliation to the IRGC or any army, government or security group in the world. Kanun Tawhid is owned by the Al Tawhid Charitable Trust. The Charity Commission is investigating events inside Kanun Tawhid and is now examining the videos seen by the BBC. The Islamic Students Associations of Britain told the BBC it is an independent group with no affiliations to any government. It added that all its activities are lawful.
should I be worried?
You know, the whole idea is to get young people subscribed to violent evangelical ideology. It's in the U.S. in Christianity as well. It ultimately fails. There are, of course, sporadic violence. In the long run, it isn't the solution, but it is painful to watch and it is painful to see. Um, and it's very scary because you would hope that we'd be more humane to each other, and if it's one thing that is being shown under the banner of religious faith, that you can get away with, if not committing murder, at least calling for murder, which to me is almost equivalent.
Well, this is an hour away up the road. I could drive to Hammersmith in an hour. Why aren't the police stamping on this?
Can I say, I wish Guy was here, because he's the kind of person who would have always a very sensible view. The one thing that I would like to say is seeing things like this reminds me of the anecdotal saying, the only way to combat bad speech is with good speech. And I don't think unless it's been proven that something really unlawful has taken place, that it would be a good idea to get the police involved. And the reason I'm saying that is because I think that would just cause more polarization. If I were in charge, I would launch something like a street epistemology group, and I would recruit, and I use the word recruit on purpose, I would recruit any free thinking and thinking student and train them in the techniques of street epistemology, and have regular weekly street epistemology sessions on campuses. In my opinion, that would over time have a more positive effect than getting the police. Sorry, it seems that there's some discontent in my house amongst the felines.
I was going to say your cats are
very, very much like I think they must be religious. So
different religions, yes.
Felis Catus, the goddess Felis Catus. So I always try to think about solutions and practical solutions at that. Okay, so you see what I have to put up with, and I wonder what it would take to get something like that launched. Now, that's where I think we as free thinkers need to take more responsibility for the societies that we live in, because we need to mobilize and drown out the bad speech with good speech. And I think street epistemology is the way to go.
Well, on that subject, I'm trying to raise interest in a project to erect a statue to atheism.
Yeah. Because
at the moment, we have this monstrous woman in a hijab thing that's been commissioned, and we're expecting it to be erected in the Midlands. And we are the majority. Non-believers are the majority, and we're not doing anything to celebrate the fact that we are, the majority. And so I've just today I've written to, you may have heard of Gormley, the architect of the Angel of the North, a very iconic statue that's been put up at the top end of the A1M. And Anthony Gormley is a world famous sculptor, and I'm hoping that he will join us in this mission. I've suggested to him that it's possible to represent this as an obviously human figure, but with puppet strings attached to a hand in the sky and a giant pair of scissors coming to cut them.
I like that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, so I don't know whether he's going to be on board, but if he is, we'll get some funding. We'll even get some government sponsorship, because that's what the Angel in the North has got. Oh, welcome, Ty. Thank you for joining us. We're just talking about.
Ty.
Yeah,
Dr. Wells. Dr. Wells, what do you think about my solution to bad speech is drown it out with good speech, and using street epistemology to do that?
So that's a really interesting thing. I mean, I know we're recording right now. I don't have a good pulse on where street epistemology is of the last 4 years or so since I've last done it. Though I know that as a hobby, when I was into it, I had a very different approach than most other people. My approach was good conversation is genuine, doesn't follow flowcharts, and you exhibit the openness that you want your partner to also have as well. And I feel like nowadays street epistemology sort of evolved into like a flowcharty kind of way of talking to people.
Oh,
so,
yeah. No. What I mean with, I think I'm using the term more generically, not like a trademark or anything.
Sure. Yeah, I didn't like it when it was trademarked. Now it's I like the idea of just like openly speaking with people to figure out on a process of how did you come to that understanding? Can we work together to reach a mutual conclusion, or at least observe the path that you follow? I think that in its own heart is beautiful, and that doesn't belong or started with a street epistemology. In my opinion, that's just literally asking good questions. And I think anybody can ask good questions and inspire good conversations with people. So yes, let's have more of that.
Just to get back to the whole thing about the Islamic students associations, I think that's exactly where these challenges need to be had, is on campuses. And because that is where you train people to think. That's why universities exist, to train people to think. And I think I don't think there's enough of that happening. I think that we need to get back to the original idea of universities as places where people have heated, logical, rational conversations about important topics. I don't see that happening on campus in my mind. And I think
I can add to that, just because you were breaking up. The most beautiful thing that happened to me when I was able to go to university was I got to live away from home, right? I got to meet a lot of different people. And unlike high school, where you come back home and reform your home-based culture over and over again, when you're in college, you stay in college and you realize, oh, the outline of who I thought I was is not as firm or as bold or as contrasted as I thought. And I actually like certain things that I didn't realize I could like. And I could start thinking about things that I didn't necessarily have the time to think about. And I can meet a lot of different people that I had different prejudices or opinions on, and realize, oh my gosh, not only can we talk together, but we can work together. And that was like an eye-opening paradigm shift for me.
You can develop tolerance for each other.
Yeah, like this guy right here.
Well, there you go.
I just want to say that one of the things that evangelicals of all faiths and religions have succeeded in doing is to replicate on university and college campuses what they've done in society.
Yeah, we shouldn't.
Well, at least they attempt to, you know. And the problem is that there are evangelical universities where those thought bubbles don't.
Not here there aren't.
You know,
that's true.
In the United States, there are evangelical universities where you go and you are indoctrinated. You do not. You don't get the experience that Ty had or that I had, which is oh, you see a bigger world. In fact, they purposely make your world smaller.
Yes. And they give you the confidence as if you got an equivalent education for someone who didn't go to a Christian school. And that's the terrifying thing. I have in my laboratory, the most terrifying conversation I've had in a biochemistry laboratory was a guy whose name is Todd, because he might as well just use his real name. It's fine. I won't say his last name. But basically, he's like showing me pictures of dogs that are like Chihuahuas where their heads just get progressively smaller. He's like, aren't these dogs cute? And I'm like, man, their eyes are bugging out. Like this seems like, like we're taking breeding too far. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, those used to be wolves. And he's like, Ty, there's no such thing as evolution. We're wearing lab coats in a laboratory. And like, this is like, he's about to pull a karyotype on a Petri dish. And he's looking at me dead eye like, there's no such thing as evolution. Do I have to have this conversation now? And his manager didn't believe in evolution. And I'm like, why am I working here? This is crazy. So I finally got to move to a much better place. But we are very much science-minded in like the way how we approach things. But you could be surprised how people who can get the technical training, but still get the indoctrination to the point where it never triggered their cognitive dissonance, are so ill-equipped to truly understand the concepts that they're employing every day. And that in my mind is both
that is where we need the conversations, because learning science and learning chemistry doesn't necessarily, in fact, I would argue it does not equip one to have conversations. It's the humanities that equips one to have conversations. And that's exactly what I'm propagating for. And these student associations, while good, and while I'd never be against them, the most powerful student association should be the one for learning how to have constructive conversations about difficult topics.
Communication should be
powerful student association.
The communication class should be, here's a table, we're setting it up here. You're going to sit on one side and introduce people to sit down next to you, and we will record you talking, and we'll have feedback on constructively maintaining a good conversation with someone. Yes, absolutely. I love it.
Me too. In fact, I wish I could find it now, but I can't. Back a couple of weeks ago when we had a chat with a lovely guy who used to be a priest and is now an atheist and an American, and he mentioned Dan. He mentioned
Kenneth
that
Kenneth Daniels.
Kenneth, that's right. Yeah, he mentioned that he'd been to, or was it his father, had been to a Christian engineering school.
It was him. Or his father. Christian engineering school.
Yes. Oh, that's so weird.
We make our crosses slightly off angled. Better axis.
Exactly.
You know?
Yes. You engineer them back to 90 degrees.
We're trying different angles this year.
All right.
Please, if you haven't watched that episode, it was our first one for 2024, and I think it was really good. And I just I'll take the credit for introducing Kenneth, who is an amazing person. But I just want to say, as I did on the show, that I went to a university that was called the Potchefstroom University for Christian Higher Education. Okay, so I did that too. And here I am.
Right.
I've always said that we have a group of people in America called Amish. Do I need to? You guys know about them? Okay, great. I always said the Amish are sort of like the equivalent of if I only went to homeschool for my entire life. Like they are functionally what homeschool looks like if you've never had Black people, Jewish people, rock and roll. I don't know, like any sort of influx of different cultures from any other kind of society. And they are doing the same thing they've been doing for like the last 500 years, which is making tables, making stools, and making apple pies. And a lot of people look at that and be like, wow, what a great society. In my mind, that's one on the precipice of collapse. If they didn't have us to bolster them with our taxpayers.
Right, exactly. Well, what is it? I saw a meme once where somebody was proudly saying that they were the valedictorian of their homeschool.
Okay. Well, anyway, I'm going to move the conversation on now because we've already done half an hour of this show, and it's running up against the recommended length of the event. So let's go to Denver, where Pastor Eli Regalado had an exciting message for his congregation. After months of prayers and cues from God, he was going to start selling cryptocurrency.
That is a little late on the bandwagon for that. But when you think about why doesn't religion have a cryptocurrency? That should have happened like 4 years ago. It's so straightforward. A pope coin.
With divine wisdom, he said, he was setting the rails for God's wealth transfer.
Mm.
And he and his wife launched a cryptocurrency and sold it to members of his Victorious Grace Church and several other Christian communities in the Denver area. They sold it through the Kingdom Wealth Exchange, an online, yes, I know, an online cryptocurrency marketplace that he created, controlled, and operated. So it's gone bust. But as recently as last week, Eli Regalado expressed the hope that divine intervention would bail out him and his investors because either I misheard God, or God is still not done with this project and he is going to do a new thing. What we're praying for and what we're believing for still is that God is going to do a miracle. God is going to work a miracle in the financial sector, and everyone who invested will be able to receive their money back.
Yeah.
One, I'm totally for that. I'm totally for it, but there needs to be a satanic cryptocurrency at the same time too. I want to see people hedge their bets and see which one rises to the highest.
But you realize this is the same guy, if I know the article, who actually took a lot of that money, pocketed it.
Yeah.
Was found to have embezzled the funds.
Yeah.
And then is quoted as saying that God wanted me to renovate my home.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes.
Because your home is the temple of God, or is it your body? I'm not sure, but never mind. I just want to, on this topic of prayer and what messages that God gives people, I've been conducting a sort of clandestine experiment. It's a bit mean, I have to confess. So I recently joined this Facebook group. It's called Boerland Towns. So Boerland is the Upper Lands is the region that I reside in, and it is about 250,000 people, quite a lot of people, and it's interesting to see what goes on there. It seems mostly what is happening there is preaching. So then there was this person who professed to be a 12-year-old girl whose mother passed away, and she's now basically an orphan, and she has a 2-year-old brother. Very long, sad story. And there's no funds to have a funeral for the mother. And she's basically asking for help on this Facebook page, which I would never, it's probably a scam, first thing. But what I then did, everybody was commenting, please, God, help. We know that if we ask you will give the money. And you. So then I made the following post on that group. I said, I pray to God that he will speak into the hearts of all the funeral directors in the Boerland, in that town, and sponsor the funeral for this girl's mother. And if that happens, I will donate 100 Rand to that funeral. But I first want to see the evidence that God if God works, and I specifically use this phrase, if God speaks it into their hearts and presses it upon their spirit to help this little girl, here are the details. And I followed up about a week ago, and I said, so I'm waiting with bated breath. Has anything happened? And the two things were really funny. Firstly was that I got so many likes and little praying hands to my post. So I mean, just many people thought it was brilliant. And secondly, I haven't had any response to my follow-up. I just want to find out, since I'm not in direct contact with the Lord, does anybody who is in direct contact with the Lord, have they received any feedback? And I haven't seen, I think that post was probably deleted by the admin. But that's exactly what it boils down to. I mean, and I also said, can an atheist ask God something? So I mean, if God is all seeing and he can hear, and I'm asking on behalf of somebody else. I mean, I'm not asking for myself. Can I ask God to do something good for somebody else? Does God listen to requests that we make on the behalf of other people? I'm just
asking for a friend. Yes.
So far, there's no evidence that God has rewarded anybody, regardless of their religious beliefs. So you might as well. because nobody has the answer.
There's a really funny comedian who makes anti-religious humor where he says, like, yes, you can as an atheist ask God questions, and yes, God can hear you, but the setup is sort of like a phone call where God just picks up the phone and the only thing he's doing is like that's the only range of conversation that you actually have between him
even
and God.
if you're asking on behalf of somebody who believes in him and really needs it.
Yeah,
still going, nope.
Well,
Right.
what is it, the whole thing of God, please, help this person, and meanwhile, there's 15,000 people starving in India.
Yeah.
So where's the who has the direct line to this monster who would allow those 15,000 children die?
There you go.
Well, we know who has a direct line, and that's our cryptocurrency pastor. Whose house has not been renovated. He has a direct line.
Except that this cryptocurrency pastor who had a god remodeling of his hell house, there's a court hearing scheduled for Monday.
I'm shocked it was only a renovation. You would think that if you were the lord of a cryptocurrency, you would at least be able to buy another house.
Right.
Like,
I think he put money on like a couple of Mercedes as well. Like he was,
right.
Yeah.
Like, no, I just need a new paint, just a new paint, maybe some carpets. And that's it. All right, fine, okay.
Very modest, yeah. Staying with the ridiculous items of news, but going to South Africa.
Oh,
listen up.
That's rare.
Yeah, a man who claimed to be a prophet drowned and was then torn to pieces by crocodiles while being baptized in the Olifants River in Limpopo last Sunday.
Classic Limpopo.
Don't make fun of my provinces. It's a province in my country. Don't make fun of us. But I sent John a little snippet of. So I know these things happen, but I've also come across news like this being fake news, like the pastor was trying to walk on water. So I just double checked it. Not that I don't trust you, John. Sometimes it's too amazing even for me to believe.
Yeah.
Although it's happened numerous, but the crocodile thing, it just sounded so gruesome. But okay, yes, the Olifants River is full of big crocodiles. Yeah. And I came across this very unknown, like little local newspaper who reported on it. And it's, I just have to share this phrasing with you because I said to John, I think it proves that there must be an afterlife, because the phrasing was the bodily remains belonging to the deceased were recovered. So, bodily remains belonging to the deceased. So, there was a joke many years ago. Samora Machel was the leader of Mozambique, and his plane crashed, killed by the South African Defence Forces. And there was a horrible joke. So his name was Samora Machel, and there was this joke that he was walking. People came across him, his ghost, and they said,
your audio is cracking up, I'm afraid. But yeah, I know what you mean. I did find two sources of this particular news story, and one of them said that one prophet suddenly experienced difficulties and drowned, and it was suspected that he was attacked by crocodiles during the baptism ceremony, and that's a police spokesperson, name of Colonel Malasela Ledwaba. So that was why I published it. I thought it had sufficient credibility coming from, two independent sources. But there's always this possibility that
I wonder, like, we are being a bit tongue-in-cheek about this now, but you have to imagine that when Jesus died, people were probably kind of tongue-in-cheek as well. It's like some guy who was born in Bethlehem died on the cross, even though he said he was the son of God. Isn't that funny? oh, well, I'm sure that story will just brush aside. You don't know. 20 years from now, people might be wearing crosses of crocodiles on their necks.
Or it might be like
Crocodiles, yeah.
Well,
Crocodile
yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
there are evangelical communities in the U.S. where people use snakes,
Yes.
and then
Yes.
they get bitten by snakes and they die. You know,
Yes.
so
Yes.
so it's not unusual at all. You know, if you're expecting to be shielded by God when you are in the jaws of an alligator, good luck.
Right.
Or handling poisonous snakes.
Yeah.
I will throw this out. When we lose people as life, that's a sad thing. And the sad part is we didn't have to go through this needless loss of life. What happens is like religion can oftentimes just cloud people from what could be a good, additional, reasonable mind that can walk the earth. But I do also think that while we shouldn't chide it, I mean, well, we should chide it for a bit, but like also like understand the fundamental. We need to remember that what happens in Limpopo stays in Limpopo.
In the river, in the Olifants River,
Right.
in fact.
Well, we're running out of time, I'm afraid. But I want to finish with something you'll like, because I don't know where this happened, but you may like to see, if I can find it. Yeah, somewhere I was in Mexico, but I don't know exactly where in Mexico. A dog was blessed by a priest, and I just want you to see this picture, and then you give me your reaction. Look.
They used to be wolves. They used to be
I
wolves.
just want to say, I think that's brilliant, and I shall now bless Picasso. So you can now make a video, and she's also not liking it. Picasso, sit now still. See, I'm blessing you in the name. Oh. This is her reaction.
Good.
There you go.
Yeah.
Never. There's a piece of advice, isn't there? Never go before a camera with children or pets.
Right.
Yeah, because it's always a bad move.
But just
So-
on a serious note, we have about 2 minutes left. I just want to say, I think it's very sensible to bless animals because they are part of God's creation, and dogs are particularly lovable. And I see absolutely no problem with blessing dogs. I think it should be done more regularly, in fact. And if priests could bless and spend more time with dogs and cats, maybe they would leave the innocent little children alone. So I am 100% for blessing animals because I think animals are extremely important to humans and in the world. And I absolutely condone blessing all animals. In fact, priests should go out and bless the lambs and the cows, and they should begin where the important things are.
Yeah.
And
I
of
think
course,
David and I would agree that if you just made religion only for other animals other than
yeah,
humans.
I like it. And of course, to the dyslexic, there's no difference between God and dog. So
in the beginning, dog made the universe. Makes sense.
Say bye-bye. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, everybody. Be well. Bye-bye.
We're supposed appealing for peace, or were you praying for peace?
And the same applies to the carry-on drag.
Yeah, that's a good question.